Terrence of Reddit, what is the weirdest thing you caught your children doing? Found my kid talking to the hole in the sink when he was 2. Turns out that's where he said God lives. Carry on, you weirdo. X's eldest hoarded cardboard tubes. If asked, they were simply for later. The youngest adopted and formed a strong emotional bond with a garlic for about a week. Few years ago, the cinnamon challenge was a thing. Walked in the door to my son with his head under the kitchen faucet, gulping and spitting water. He accidentally grabbed the cumin instead of the cinnamon. When my son was about 3 years old, he liked to wash his eyebrows with my facial cleanser. Just the eyebrows, wet, lather, rinse, repeat. He said it made them nice and soft. Not my child, but I've caught my sister doing multiple strange things as a child. The 2 most notable were I once caught her playing with a bag with yellowish liquid inside when she was 10. She had pulled this bag from the side of her backpack. I asked her what it was. It was her own pee. She had been keeping it in there for days, and once in a while she'd pull it out, go play with. I was horrified. When she was 8, she cut off her doll's hair, dismembered it, and gave it a funeral, which she made all of us attend. She went to dig it up several days later, but it wasn't there. She's done many other things, but those were the 2 weirdest things she did. Tacking peas from our garden up her nose. This required a trip to the local hospital emergency room, where the doctor, a dad of several young children himself, thought it was hilariously funny. Soon my wife and I were laughing as well. I woke up to my 5-year-old spraying Windex on the window beside my bed, cleaning it terribly, then nodding at me and moving on to cleaning the windows in the next room. I still don't know what the hell was. She told me before bed that it needed cleaned so her cat could look out. The bottom of the windows gets smeared because the cats push their faces against it, so she wanted it clean for them. My brother decided he wanted a pee hat, which is literally what it sounds like, a hat he could pee in during the night. Well, already a stupid idea since he didn't empty it. He chose a plastic hat with hole in it. It was a tuck construction hat with 2 holes in the top, meaning his makeshift toilet had 2 holes for the pee to leak from, and he was keeping it in his toe box. When my brother-in-law was 3, he was so obsessed with the toilet plunger they had to buy him his own so he'd stop grabbing the used one. It was his best friend. Tacking turds into cardboard tubes with toilet paper and hiding them under called them poop bombs. There was like 10 of them under there. Let's see. My daughter was drinking strawberry milk and then spitting it back into the cup so she could drink it again. I had hosed off a tarp, and it was drying on the patio. We went outside, and she just stooped down and took a drink out of a puddle on the tarp. Just today I was in the garage and she came out, instantly grabbed a toothbrush I used to clean car parts and stuck it in her mouth. I don't even know anymore. My mom caught me bringing eggs from the kitchen into my room and sitting on them in a blanket nest, hoping they'd hatch. What she didn't catch was that I had been doing this for a while and would put the eggs back into the fridge, and they wouldn't hatch after a few days. When my daughter was little, old ladies would come over and enthusiastically ask her simple questions, like "What's your name?" And she would always reply in flat monotone, "Birthday cake." Then they'd ask another question like, "Oh, well, how old are you?" And she'd say, "Birthday cake." They would look over at us with great concern. So annoying. I caught my twins in 1st grade measuring each other's penises with a tape measure they got to measure their heads in 1st grade for bike helmets. I walk in after their baths and one is on his back with his legs in the air. Of course my husband said, "That's not something you do until high school." I was the child. I was in my backyard and noticed there were a lot of slugs around since it had been raining. I was concerned that they had nowhere to go and they would be stuck outside, where they would drown in the rain. So I went to the garage and got a bin and went around collecting every slug I could find. Then I got the idea to make it into a miniature city. I put in water, moss sticks, etc., and it became a project of mine that I maintained for weeks. Well, one day my mom walks outside for whatever reason and finds me holding a bin that's just full of slugs. She made me put them back and hose the bin down. I was pissed. I lost all my hard work. I'm not a parent, but my niece was very upset that her older sister wouldn't turn the TV over when I was babysitting once. After about 10 minutes, she pretended to be interested in the washing machine that was on at the time and sat in front of it and watched it like a TV for an hour and 20 minutes. Her older sister watched the rest of her film, but obviously wasn't enjoying it. She was outraged that her little sister was having a great time watching wet clothes spin round and round. It's the most creative act of revenge I've ever seen. When my son was 3 years old, We noticed the smell of burnt plastic coming from our heater vents. I called one of our friends that worked in heating and cooling and he came over. Our furnace was in our crawl space, so he went down. About 15 minutes later, he asked me to hand him 3 black garbage bags through one of the vents, so I did so. He came up later with 3 bags of plastic toes. I had wondered where all my son's toes were going. I asked my son why he was putting toes down the vents. He said, "Mommy, there are alligators down there and if I don't feed them my toes, they will eat my sister." I saw my kid, who was 4, in the backyard looking for bugs or worms. He grabbed something and put it in his mouth. I asked him about a few minutes later. He said he ate a worm. I laughed and asked why. He said he wanted to know what it tasted like, so I asked what did it taste like. He said it tasted like. Next day I asked him if he really ate a worm. He replied yay in the most defeating and embarrassed way any human could. "You live, you learn." 1. Coating himself and the entire bathroom in an entire, brand new, industrial-sized garlic powder from Costco. 2. Having a snow day with his friends. After unzipping the giant beanbag chair. Not a parent. When I was a kid I used to prefer to poop in the park closest to my house instead of at home. I used to wonder who cleaned up my poop every day because the poop was always gone by the next day. After months of doing this I found out a neighbor mom was the one who kept cleaning up my poop. Our walking towards the park from her condo across the row with a baggie, probably because she had a chore every day that included going to the park to clean up my poop before her children could go play. Ground in one of those wooden cubicles at the top of a slide, peering out through a crack between the wooden pillars, watching the neighbor mom coming closer, trying to finish my poop at a rapid pace. I finished my poop, didn't wipe because I was a disgusting child pooping in a park, yanked my pants up and flew my poopy ass down the slide and booked it through the field to home base. Raced through the door and continued to live my best life until there was a knock on the door. My mom answered the door and to my horror there was neighbor lady and she and my mom had a long talk and outside, on the front step. When my mom came in she looked at me with pure disgust and said, "Nitrogen monoxide, more pooping at the park." My older brother's friends were over and overheard my mom scream that at me. They demanded to know the whole story. Then when I started kindergarten, one of the children, the poop picker-upper neighbor mom, was in a grade ahead of me and recognized me and told everyone what I had done. I was and always will be. The park. I did not have a very good childhood. I should definitely clarify that. I have no explanation other than I was probably neglected. To those wondering, it happened in the 90s. Thank you for the awards. A little girl I was babysitting was slowly stirring her bowl of chocolate ice cream into mush. I asked her what she was doing, and she replied very seriously, "I'm making poo-poo for God to put in people's bottoms." When my son was first learning to talk, my mom kept saying, "Just wait until he learns to say no," like really building up the anticipation. Well, I opened my eyes one morning to my beloved child, 3 inches from my face, is staring at me. As soon as he sees I'm awake, he loudly and dramatically whispers, "Nitrogen monoxide." I still feel like he was letting me know that whole face had started. When my son was 3, he had night terrors for a few months. At least that's what I suspected. I was really concerned. The most unsettling thing he did wasn't waking up sobbing though. Sometimes he would wake up around midnight, walk to where I was, stare at me, and then walk back to bed. He wouldn't respond to me and just sit on his bed while staring at the ground. If I tried to comfort him, he would become angry and violent. Next morning, he'd be his normal self. At that time he would often ask if ghosts were real. We never exposed him to anything with that sort of content. I'd try to reassure him that they were just imaginary. He would insist that they were real. Sometimes at night he would call me to his room and say someone was there. I was freaking out a little. Not just by the idea that my child was seeing strange shit, but that he might be suffering from psychological issues. My wife insisted that this wasn't something to be concerned about. She's a psychologist and I respected her opinion, but I just couldn't stop worrying. I felt like I needed to help my kid. Anyhow, it became less and less frequent and stopped altogether for the most part. He still asks about and insists that ghosts are real from time to time, but he isn't scared at night anymore. My youngest daughter was about 18 months old. She had, about a week before, discovered how to climb out of her own crib. Also, about a month before, she had once taken off her own diaper, not a repeat event, but a one-time. Mill was visiting us, and we were all slow to wake up. Around 7:30, The baby monitor alerted me, and my daughter was awake, but happy and content in her crib. I let my wife sleep in, and I grabbed a quick 5-minute short before going to grab her. When I got had put the 2 pieces climb out of crib, and take off diaper together, and use them to repaint her room. I will never recover from the trauma of the smell. 3-year-old daughter would dig through the garden or under backyard objects to find pillbugs, woodlice, and then bring them to us when they rolled into a ball. My wife and I would feign interest and tell her that they would stop rolling up into a ball once she left them alone. A while back, my wife had given her a small, unused makeup bag. One summer night, I caught her whispering into the makeup bag right before bedtime. I asked her who she was talking to. She said she was talking to all the beetles that didn't want to stop being balls. I looked inside. The makeup bag was full of dead pillbugs, at least 30 of them. She had been collecting them and trying to talk them out of their ball position. Not yet a mother, but I am the oldest of 4. When I was in high school, I had a bathroom in my room. Very important to specify. It wasn't my bathroom, you just needed to go through my room to use it. That said, one day my youngest brother, probably around 6 at the time, was pooping, and being young had no shame, so the door was wide open. I walk into my room to see he had taken all of the cardboard tampon applicators out of the trash can and built extended fingers with them. I could not stop laughing as I told him to take them off. My 3-year-old's first joke was, "Hey, look at my armpit," and she would point at her armpit and laugh. She would do this over and over. They warn you about first steps and first words, but first joke. I am a proud thanks for the gold. I'll give my daughter a gold star tomorrow. I found my son and his cousin absolutely coated in calamine lotion. They'd obviously found it, being for Anne 6 years old. They decided to do a bit of finger painting with it. I get that, but I don't entirely understand why his pants were off. Yes, his penis had calamine on it too. Being that it was the 90s, I do have a hilarious picture of them posing together with their collie AE body art. Not a parent, but when I was younger I caught my sister shitting on the carpet. She hadn't had an accident, and a little bit ended up on the carpet. She was full on shitting on the carpet. Needless to say, my parents weren't too impressed. Not a parent, but my little sister used to do pretty weird stuff. She used to lay over the side of the couch so her head was upside down and drool spit down her face until it filled her nose. She said that it would go through her nose back into her mouth like a circle. My oldest son was about 3 or so and was using one of those play kitchens. He had a little pot on the stove, and since I wanted to be an engaged mother, I asked him what he was doing. "I'm cooking baby Jesus." He had indeed taken the baby Jesus figure out of one of my mother-in-law's nativity scenes and had put him in the pot to cook. I used to sleepwalk when I was younger. I once walked downstairs and locked myself in a closet. My mom woke up to me screaming downstairs in the dark. I was like 4 years old. I threw up in the hallway once when I was a kid because I couldn't make it to the bathroom. I told my parents in the middle of the night and went back to bed. I was 4 at the time. I heard my dad say, "Did she say she threw up last night?" About a second later I heard him fall. He said, "Yep, and I just fell in it." Caught my 5-year-old son smushing his privates between the toilet lid and seat. Also have a 3-year-old son that needs an audience while he uses the bathroom, and he'll often start laughing BC he has no penis BC he's pressing on it to try making it, and or weird. My oldest, when he was 3, wanted to walks out of his room with a big rolled ball. I thought nothing of it, as they lil bro to had a little Play-Doh station and were playing Nestle while I was cooking. He proudly holds it up and tells me, "Look at my ball, awesome," then announced loudly, "It's a poop ball. Cue the slight horrified look and immediate washing, scrubbing and locating of anything played with. Toddler was making soup in a kitchen pot. Comes up to me and says, "Taste, mama, it's pea soup," and I take a pretend spoonful and say, "Yum. Tastes good," and then she goes, "Oh, I have to make more," and puts the pot on the floor and squats over it and pretends to pee in it while making a sound. Pee. It was pea soup. 80s kid here. For those of you who didn't live in the dark ages, there was this heinous medicine called merthiolate. It was a mercury-based antibacterial agent, often bright pink or bloody orange in color, whose cap had a plastic rod dipping into the medicine as an applicator. One morning before my parents had woken up, probably 1983 ASH, I was wandering about the house tripped and skinned my knee on the floor. The Windex had the same applicator inside that the merthiolate did, and I spent the morning dabbing window cleaner on my skinned knee until my mom came into the kitchen and saw what I was up to. There was another such early morning of little me hijinks in which I was alone in the living room after the adults had an evening of beer and board games. They left the table pretty much as is when they likely stumbled off to bed. My chance to be like the big people. I pulled a cigarette out of the pack and sat there sucking on the filter while having conversations with myself and moving the sorry board game pieces around. My mother again came out, saw this, and started cracking up. I was the son. When I was about 7 years old, I started to develop an interest in ants. So I came up with the idea of having an ant farm. I got a shovel and took the sod out of my backyard in a circle around 4 feet in diameter. I would dig little holes in this plot to reveal and confirm that there were indeed ants there. Upon discovering the ants, I would get the sort of bricks that had holes in them and plant them in the ground so the ants had a place to live. I then was not satisfied with the number of ants on my farm. There was the old, rotten tree stump adjacent to my ant farm, where I subsequently tore it apart. I had seen ants crawling on it previously in search of more ants. I would literally just grab ants and let them crawl on me and then carry them to my ant farm to transplant them. I did this for probably 6 more years, and let me tell you, I had a shit ton of ants hanging out by the pool. Our son 7 at the time had a shit-eating grin on his face and he's giggling with his arms up on the side of the pool. Kids are weird, so we didn't even think twice. Finally, after like 10 minutes of us just chatting with him in this position, he excitedly announces, "Hey Dad, if you stand here and lean against this jet, it feels real good, come try." I spit my drink everywhere, stood up, and walked off so I didn't die fucking laughing in front of him. I totally abandoned my fiance to deal with that and just watched him try to keep it together through the window. Was phenomenal. Now we have to keep an eye out and shoo him away from the jet when we notice him lingering. Kids are gross. Just gave my son a piece of bread I made while he was watching a movie on the couch. About 5 minutes later, I walk over. He's got the bread in one hand, his wiener in the other, just munching bread watching Clue. When I was 7 or 8, my mom gave me Benadryl before bed. Later, when she went to the kitchen to get water, she heard this noise behind her and found me standing but naked on the couch. She put me back to bed, and all was fine, until the next day, when she found I had also peed on the floor in the bathroom. My daughter had her door locked, which is odd. I gave her some privacy for a while, but then I got worried, so I made her open the door and she was watching a political debate. She was 13. Edit: this was dial-up days, so probably not porn, lol. Okay, so this is a story from my mother. I was around 3 or 4 years old and I absolutely hated wearing clothes. We lived out in the country, so she just let me run around naked. One day she comes outside to catch me sitting on the windowsill pooping. She said I told her I was a rabbit. We had a cordless landline, picked it up from the receiver to use it, and there was nothing. Wasn't working, so I asked my wife if she had tried to use it, and she said no. We were talking about it and my 8-year-old son chimed in. Maybe someone dropped it in water. My wife and I looked at each other and kind of smiled. We asked him if he knew anything about it, and he said he had dropped in the toilet. He swore it was an accident. We laughed and said it's okay, accidents happen. Don't think we really found out what he was really doing with it in the bathroom. I have a friend whose child for F is perfectly normal and a fun kid, but ... for no reason and with no warning will banshee wail at a pitch I could not fathom before hearing it. It is the most terrifying, heart attack inducing experiencing when you are relaxed and not ready for it. I'm sure she is just voice testing, etc. A fuck me is not good. Don't have a kid, but apparently me and my sister were younger. We found some ashes and decided to pour them down the air vent on the floor. The ashes were my grandparents' pet dog. Years ago I lived in a raised ranch house. In the living room was this giant window that overlooked the driveway. It was prob 5 feet tall by 10 feet long. It was only about a foot off the ground. In the back of the house was a set of sliding French doors. I had 2 dogs. They would run to the front window and bark if they saw anyone or anything. If they lost sight of them, they'd run to the rear doors, have no clue why. I assume they think they might see them from that one. My oldest was 3 at the time. He started running to the window with them and going roof with them and would run to the back doors. It got so bad that he was eventually at the window barking first and the dogs would follow. We later found him playing with dog toys that I had to take away. He also started crawling more than walking, had been walking 100 fine. The last straw for me was I eventually caught him drinking water from the dog bowl instead of asking for something to drink. We cracked down and turned him back into a human after. LOL. When my son was about 5, he was playing in the living room while I was making lunch. Suddenly I hear him making some weird retching noises, so I ran over to see what was happening. He was on his hands and knees, rocking back and forth. And suddenly one of the cat's toes, a little yarn ball, popped out of his mouth. I thought he'd been choking on it. No, he'd been imitating Puss in Boots coughing up a hairball from his favorite Shrek movie. So this was me. But I used to sniff mothballs as a kid. I'd why? I just thought they smelled nice. Nice enough to shove one so far up my nose that I had to be taken to the hospital to get it removed. I no longer liked the smell of mothballs. When my sister and I were 10 and 12, we filled latex gloves with mayonnaise and one with flour. We kept them in a shoebox in the closet and would go in the and play with them like they were little squishy dolls. Right now would be my 2-year-old daughter watching herself eat frozen peas and corn in the mirror, as well as opening her mouth wide enough to look at the chewed up peas and corn in her mouth. Didn't see it happen but managed to benefit from that. I am the mother of 4 boys. I raised them in a 1-toilet home, and in my husband, and I'm outnumbered 5 to 1. Let me tell you, when you live with that many males, you get used to making sure that the seat is down. Your focus is solely on whether or not that seat is in a position for a safe sit, so you may not be paying attention to the floor. Indeed, the massive puddle of urine spreading from wall to wall may completely escape your notice if your eyes are looking to make sure your nether bits don't end up in the bowl. So, flipping upside down in the middle of the night came as a great surprise. Also surprising, the 2 broken toes and dislocated finger I got from smashing into the toilet bowl. It took me 10 minutes to wake my husband from sleep to help kid me out because I was jammed in so tightly between the toilet and the wall. Plus, my husband didn't want to touch me because I was indeed covered in the cold stenchy urine of 1,000 bladders. I may have accidentally kicked him in the face when he grabbed me by the broken toes to pull me out. I regret nothing. He was laughing. Not a parent, but I had to tell this story. I was in kindergarten and the educator told the class that we were all going to the bathroom, so everybody followed him, and we went. When we all came back, we saw that one kid didn't follow the group and stayed in the class. When I looked through the door frame, the one kid that didn't come to the bathroom was standing in the middle of the classroom next to a big turd. Big turd. I still ask myself why he didn't come to the bathroom if he really needed to poop, and why he chose to do it in the middle of the room. Not the parent, but the older sister walked into the house to find my brother and sister watching baseball YouTube in my parents' room. My brother, at the time 11, was chewing absent-mindedly on a very realistic blue jelly dildo. I ran to get my mom, dying of laughter, and only managed to get out he's chewing on something blue and wiggly before she takes off running to the house, screaming at the top of her lungs, and the filling cabinet and moved to false bottom, uncovering my parents' small assortment of dildos and vibes, and my brother for some reason decided taking it out and chewing on it was a fantastic idea. Kid 1 teaching herself to knit. I awoke at 7:00 a Saturday morning and she had half a 3D bear knitted. We own no knitting needles. She was 8. Kid 2 eating inedible things. Examples: lotion age 7, silica packet bead age 16. No reason except curiosity. Caught the same kid rubbing her nose on her pancakes because it felt good. Kid 3 headstands, unassisted. Beginning at 11 months, I made the mistake of freaking out when I walked in and saw her in the crib with her feet in the air, and she thought it was hilarious, so she's continued to hone the skill. When I was young enough to be in a high chair, my dad came home during dinner. He'd been out fishing and set this largemouth bass on my tray. I see it gasping for air and somehow connect that it wants a kiss, so I pick it up and kiss it right on the mouth. Skateboard keychain and ripped the truck wheels off. It was one piece and proceeded to shove them so far up my nose that my mom had to take me to the and hold my hand while the doctor pulled them out. I was probably 2 at the time. Also at around 2 I was riding my tricycle around and somehow fell off the seat onto a bar, smashing my labia. Well, my mom always kissed my boo-boos and I got so mad at her not kissing this one, I forgot all about the pain. My younger brother once took a tampon applicator out of my bathroom trash, didn't wash it, and proceeded to use it as a scope on a tow gun of his. My dad told me of this when I got home from school and I laughed and asked why he's letting the bow dig through the bathroom garbage. He was in preschool. My sister used to eat country crock right out of the bin by the fistful. It got to the point that we had to hide the butter from her. She was probably 5 or 6 before we could get her to stop. My baby brother used to have this thing where he'd have to poop like right now, suddenly, with no time to find a bathroom. Well, we were outdoors a lot, so not a big deal. We made sure to always have toilet paper with us. Except for some reason he'd always, somehow get poop on his clothes. And he was at the age that we weren't packing spare clothes for day trip 7. So one day, we're out fishing and of course he's got to poop. Dad suggests to him to take off his pants entirely so he doesn't get poop on them. He takes them off, sets them on the ground, and poops on them, squats over them and shits right onto his shorts. I still can't figure out the logic on that one. Worst part is he did it so fast we couldn't tell him to move or grab the shorts away. Dude had to hang out fishing in a towel while his pants got washed in the lake. Terrence always told me that I used to wake up in the middle of the night and point to the TV saying that someone was there. Not a parent, but a much older sibling. I 28 now, 23, at the time used to catch my brother 9 now, for at the time taking bites out of blocks of cheese. My parents were pissed when he started eating $7 blocks of cheese like apples, but I thought it was hilarious. I'm not ready to be a mom yet, obviously. When I was a kid I learned that hairs had roots and figured it worked like the roots in plants. So for a while I would pluck hairs from my head and try to plant them on my fingertips. I don't know why I wanted to grow hair on my fingertips, just thought it was weird and funny. Anyway, I had to explain what I was trying to do one day, when my mom walked in on me staring at my fingertips with hairs stuck on them. Not caught doing, but my son sat up from a dead sleep and said, "Mom, don't look behind you," then laid back down and continued snoring. My back was to the window. I didn't get much sleep that night. My fondest memories is my mom coming into the living room with a small container of water with a glob of blue, sparkly toothpaste, and asking who was trying to turn the water blue with toothpaste. It was me. To this day, I'm still impressed she immediately figured out what I was trying to do. I know this is going to be hard to believe, but I caught my 14-year-old doing multivariable factoring in his bedroom. I thought he was caught me by surprise. Husband got the kids started on breakfast and I came down from the bedroom, and my daughter immediately announces, "Mommy, I have to tell you something. I washed my hands in the middle of the night." Me, okay. Did you go potty? Point for no. Me. Not fully awake yet. For there was a hair sticking out of my butt, so I put my hands in my butt to get it out. Me. Now fully awake. And my hands smelled bad, so I washed them. Me. And that's why I tell you to stop eating your hair. But good job washing your hands, husband. Yeah, that could have turned out worse. True. But I think our standards for turning out worse are pretty low since having kids. I heard this weird screeching sound, so I went to investigate. My son had his hands inside his shirt with his fingers sticking out the sleeves. He was pretending to be a T-Rex, making T-Rex sounds while eating a sandwich. He was 17 at the time. My then 3-year-old son was practicing his cursing. He was using his dad's go-to, "son of a bitch," as he dropped puzzle pieces from the bed to the floor. He'd drop one, curse, then drop another one, change the emphasis and tone a little, drop another wooden piece, and so on. I walked away. It felt sadistic to discipline, while laughing uncontrollably. Later, I told my husband we had to really watch our mouths. My son is only 5, so I'm sure there's going to be more weirdness to come. But when he was 3 and newly potty trained, we were at the pool in the universal change room getting his swim trunks on, and he tells me he needs to pee. I pull up his trunks and open the stall door when I see him pull open his waistband of his trunks, flip his penis up over the waistband and then let it snap closed. I said, "Dude, you don't need to take your penis out now, wait until you're at the toilet." I get he was trying to be efficient, but public nudity was not required. When my daughter was 2, she was obsessed with the Land Before Time. She wanted a baby dinosaur, so she came to us so upset that she had killed the baby dinosaur. She had hidden eggs from the fridge around the house and sat on one to hatch it. NSFW September, after a particularly dry spell after a 3-week family trip, my wife and I were getting freaky in the bedroom. When I went to grab our favorite adult toy, rather expensive toy, might at $120 or so, it was missing. I freaked out a little bit because we'd only had it a few months and we were both really into the moment. We opted to drop it and use another toy and search for the other in the morning. It probably fell behind a headboard or something, Next day I dug through our room and just could not find it. I looked everywhere I thought I may have been, thinking I put it elsewhere prior to our trip. Eventually my wife said, maybe we threw it away on accident when cleaning out our toy box before our trip. I wasn't convinced because we paid a lot for it and I don't think I would have done that, but eventually dropped it and accepted it was gone. After putting a bit of money aside, I actually bought a new one in February. Last weekend my wife and I were getting hot and heavy late one night in the living room and decided to head into our bedroom and pull out some toys. Lo and behold, our new toy was gone. Again, it nearly killed the mood, but we went on without it anyway. The next day I decided to peek around in my kids' rooms because I had a suspicion one of them took it. After checking my 9-year-old daughter's room and coming up with nothing, I checked my 10-year-old son's room. First, under his bed, nothing but a bunch of clothes hangers, trash, and kids' toys. I decided to check his bottom dresser drawer because I know he keeps some toys in there. Lo and behold, both of our expensive adult toys were in there, plus some of our older toys I'd completely forgotten about. I scooped them all up and hid them elsewhere in my room. I've since ordered a new bedside table with drawers I can install locks on, should be here Monday, but I'm not really sure how to confront my son about it yet. Once, when my daughter was about 4, I took her with me when I got my haircut. She was sitting on a chair about 10 feet away. I heard a lady say to her, "My, you are a pretty little girl. What's your name?" To which my daughter responded, "Stop talking to me." I asked her as soon as we were alone why she said that to that nice lady. My daughter said, "Dad, you told me not to talk to strangers. This is going to get buried, but it's so good." Last year one of my preschoolers for years old said her ears were hurting and itchy. She was a little dramatic, so we figured allergies, ear infection, and called mom to let her know. She didn't have a fever, so mom said she would handle it when she picked up. During nap the little girl is laying on her cot and has little gritty white pieces around her head. I get a flashlight and shine it in her ear, full of this stuff that looks like plaster. I ask her, "Honey, what's in your ear?" Her answer, "Disney magic." The week before her family had stayed in Disneyland and at the hotel. I guess she had taken plaster off the Disneyland walls and stuck it in her ears. When she got to the doctor's, mom came and got her. As soon as I called, he said her ears were packed with stuff on both sides. Orbeez, plaster, seeds from a tree, all kinds of things. They had to knock her out to get everything out, but she's 100 okay now. Story from my mother in her words. Once I used to babysit my nieces and nephews because both of their parents had to work. Some of them worked nights too, so I'd have them sleeping over at my house with my 2 sons. One morning, I woke up to find my fridge door open. I didn't know who did it, but someone had opened the fridge door and peed into it, left the door open, which also caused the food to spoil. I got everyone together to ask who did it, but none of them fessed up. So the next couple of nights I stayed up to see if any of them would do it again. Sure enough, one of my nephews walked into the kitchen, obviously sleepwalking, opened the fridge door and went to pee. I quickly grabbed him and ran him to the bathroom before he could pee. He was a deep sleeper, so he didn't really wake up, but he refused to pee in the bathroom. He kept trying to go back to the fridge. I had to wake him up. I know that's bad, but I couldn't have him peeing in my fridge. After that I told my brother, his dad, about it, and we stopped giving him anything to drink before bed. Not really weird, but certainly not expected. Daughter is 20 months old. Learned to things one what but is means and to that she can crawl, swim in the bathtub, basically holds her head above water and pulls herself around with her arms while her legs kind of float. Normally I put her in the tub as soon as the water gets warm and I start filling it easier to reach her legs to wash before they're totally submerged. So she's often playing while the faucet is running. Her hands and knees backed up under the running faucet, pushed her butt up out of the water and under the faucet stream, and started bouncing up and down while saying but and giggling, essentially twerking under the running water. We don't watch like rap music videos or reality TV or anything where she'd see that. Just ... Came up with it on her own. I worrying about her future ... I was 6, my little sister was 3 and our little brother about 1.5. They would always take off their diapers and run around naked because they thought it was funny. Well, no one was watching us briefly and they found our mom's camera. They started taking pictures of each other innocently, not realizing, of course, taking naked pictures is inappropriate. I was kinda weirded out, so I went and got mom, and she had this horrified WTF look on her face. It was much later that I realized how much trouble she could gotten into if I hadn't told her about it, and later someone saw naked pics of them on her camera. My sister and I also once mixed toothpaste into our chocolate milk and poured it into the TV speakers. My 2-year-old likes to balance things on other things. I don't usually see him doing it, but I find funny collections of things that he's managed to balance on top of each other. I'm impressed with how good he is at it. I walk past my 5-year-old son's room to see him sitting butt naked on the floor, bent over trying to suck his own dick. I swear I thought I had a few more years. Swapping dick pics with his best friend over Facebook Messenger. They're 6. We put them on video chat because they missed each other during the quarantine. Didn't realize we needed to supervise it. Not a parent, but when I was a kid, I went to a gynecology appointment with my mom. I was way too young to understand what that was, so I just sat in the corner and minded my own business. Then the doctor brought out the speculum. I thought it was a cute duck toy and asked the doctor if I could play with it. My mother was horrified, but the doctor laughed it off and said, "If your mom is okay with it, you can have your own." The doctor went into the drawers at the office and pulled out a sterile package speculum. She opened it and handed it to me with a "my mom was getting things checked out." I sat and drew a dumb duck face on the speculum. I named him Dr. Quackers and kept him for years. Strangely, that was the one time my mom would not let me take out on errands. Not a parent, but my sibling used to paint the inside of their ears with eyeshadow, one of those applicators, because they saw my mother use one of those cotton thingies. Not a parent, but what they told me I did. I used to eat just butter, just open the fridge and eat butter. When I was around one, I used to go to everyone and smell their socks. I have no idea why, and no, that didn't lead to anything. That night I used to try to clean the bathroom and I always flood it. And I always tried to eat cicadas. What a weird kid I was. My daughter was in her room about 4 years old, strumming her guitar, singing "Devil Please Come Take My Mother" and "Don't Put Them Beans in Your Ears." My sister and I laughed until we cried. My daughter was about 20 months old, so almost 2. And she was early talker, so she could form sentences. You know how most toddlers either are really shy or really giggly when they meet someone new? No, not my daughter. We went to the store once and I ran into someone I knew, and it was the first time she had met my daughter. So I said, "This is my daughter, blah blah blah." And without missing a beat, my daughter stuck out her hand for the lady to shake and said, "It's nice to meet you." Came to find out later my brother had been teaching her how to be a gentleman. LOL. Not a parent, but a big sister. I caught my little sister with a glove filled with water in her hand, sucking on it. When it poked, she ran to the bathroom and swipes on the water that's on the floor. One of the most funny and satisfying moments ever. An hour before a realtor was coming to do a showing of my house I was trying to sell, while frantically cleaning house, my 4-year-old proudly came around the corner dragging a black marker along the wall. I went around and found a long line all down the 8 is found the beginning creative squiggle art behind the door. I just had time to run and get the can of matching paint in the garage and run a paintbrush over it all. Then popped us into the car to get out in time before they came. Not my child, but my former roommate's daughter, was about 7 when she explained that she just ate a whole stick of butter one time. The way she told the story was so funny, cause she knew, like, what was I doing? That's weird. She was great. She's still alive. I just don't live with them anymore. I used to sleepwalk. Apparently I would just stand at the side of my mom's bed, staring straight and breathing heavily. Eventually I'd turn around and go back to bed. I don't remember this, but I do remember a recurring dream I had around that age, and I wonder if it affected my sleepwalking, as I'd dream a glowing figure would be in my room and ask me to follow it. I had very long hair as a child and wore cotton nighties to bed. First time my mom woke up to see me there looking like the Grudge, she almost pooped herself. Yesterday, I caught my 3-year-old standing in front of our hallway mirror, watching herself stuff pieces of toilet paper between her butt cheeks and checking to see if there was any poop on them. She just stood there and watched herself wipe her butt, and it had been going on for a good couple of minutes because she was almost a quarter of the way done with a roll of TP. When I stopped her, she tried to give me a high five. I left her hanging. My mother loves to tell this story. My twin sister and I were supposed to be napping in per respective cribs in our nursery, maybe 18 months old, not sure. Anyway, I supposed we had decided to climb out of the cribs and we found baby powder, and lots of it. We poured it all over the floor and each other. I don't think we had baby monitors at the time because we were our parents' 5th and 6th child, so maybe they felt like they didn't need them after for as well as fostering hundreds more. So eventually my mother comes in to check on us and boy, did she get a laugh. At least we smelled good. Decorating the room with baby powder is better than decorating the room with poop, like many of the other stories I've read here. For some reason, I mindlessly started peeing in a paper bag in the kitchen. I was maybe 4. I just remember looking down and saying whoa and running to the bathroom to finish. I have no idea if anyone found out. When I was in 1st grade, I drew an anatomically correct male stick figure with a healthy rack of boobs. I was drawing chicks with dicks in first, and yes, did cough for that one. I was in the kitchen, making dinner, when I caught a whiff of wintergreen out of nowhere. I look over the baby gate and see my 2-year-old, crouched like Smeagol, chowing down on a tin of Altoids I had left on the side table next to my seat. She looked up at me with the sweetest smile ever and goes, "Yummy." I almost jumped over the gate to get them away. She's a cutie, but she's a gremlin. LOL. I was napping on the couch when I heard my 4-year-old saying, "You are so cute even though you're dead." That shot me wide awake. I jolted straight up and saw him holding and petting a dead mouse. I was so groggy and disgusted and couldn't think straight. I ran around behind him and held his upper arms and shuffled him through the house to the back door and used his arms to launch this mouse onto the back patio. I washed his hands and came to a bit, and he started to cry like I just got rid of his best friend. He kept going back to the door to look longingly at his BFF all day. I've seen both of my daughters, 1 and 2 years, exploring their vaginas with their fingers, their own, not each other's. LOL. I know it is a normal part of a development, and we don't stop them from doing it, but it is still a really weird thing to see. Walked into the kids' playroom and the 3 of them, 5, 3, and 2, were holding a baby doll over the toe stove. Each of them were holding a plastic toe knife trying to saw off either a limb or the head. A little creepy since my wife is pregnant again. Should I be worried? My little sister once called me her second dad since I've helped my parents raise her, so I'll kinda count this one. Anyways, one time I happened to see her repeatedly headbutt a tube of toothpaste that was on the little countertop outside our bathroom. I just kinda stared at her until she turned around and we made eye contact, and she just said, in a very serious tone, "It disrespected me," and walked off. I still have no idea what she meant to this day, and it haunts me. Caught my 4-year-old biting his toenails the other day. Mind do weird stuff all the time. Preschoolers and toddlers are strange. I didn't catch him doing it, but yesterday my 7-year-old son asked me if I want to hear something. He said he just did the biggest poo and it was so big he had to wrap his hand in toilet paper and pull it out of his bum. Not really sure why. I haven't learned yet that you want to hear something is a warning you're about to hear some weird shit. Unplugged expansion lead was on the kitchen floor. It was like a reel with spaces for multiple plugs. A toddler came along and started squatting over it to try and poke his dinkle in one of the holes. He used to trail it over the metal carpet fixer too. Said it felt cold, then good. Lovely. Walked in on my son 7 years old in my bathroom, hence the no knocking, standing in front of the mirror shirtless flexing his arms saying, "Hey baby, look at these guns, who do you want to marry?" I have literally never done anything like that, so I have no idea where it came from, and he has never spilled the beans. When I was in kindergarten, there was this type of grass that would grow only on the edges of the field we would play on. I would uproot it like a weed and eat the roots. They tasted like celery. My sister one time got caught by some boys on the playground picking things up. They asked her what it was and she replied, in the most matter-of-fact tone, "Magic balls." And they said that it was rabbit poop. She replied to that with, "No, they're magic balls, they just appear every day." To this day, we have a jingle about it. My youngest was sitting on the toilet chewing on a toilet paper roll the other day. Like a new roll, there are chew marks all around it. I asked her what she was doing, so she hissed at me and said I was not smart enough to understand. Later she went and drew eyes and a tail on it and named it Simon. It lives on her windowsill now so it can talk to its bird friends. My then 2-year-old son was outside driving his Matchbox cars, the mud, which was weird because it hasn't rained and we lived in a desert. I watched in horror as he reached back and into his diaper and pulled out more mud for his Matchbox cars. I freaked out, ran him inside and into a bath. The cars were thrown away and replaced. Still grosses me out to think about. My wife is a preschool teacher and has caught one of her girls drinking from the toilet on multiple occasions. Caught my daughter in the bathroom whispering pretending to be the basilisk from HP and the Chamber of Secrets. When my son was 6 now 11, I would let him watch kids YouTube. Somehow while cooking dinner, he got quiet. Well, you know what that means. So I go check on him. When I find him, he's under the kitchen table watching black girls twerk on YouTube. I asked him if he understood what they were doing and immediately threw iPad on floor. He said he was looking for something to watch. Well, I was dying inside. The look on his face was epic. I didn't make a big deal. I wanted him to ask me questions, but he didn't. Not a parent, but an older brother he was for at the time. Man thought that giving my parakeets a shower with Windex was a good idea. Poor guys had the most confused look on their faces since they were very friendly with us. Didn't know if it was a new plaything or not. Asked him about it and he said they liked it. They ended up surviving thankfully and died a couple years later after of old age. Oldest one was 22.